All right, guys, we're back and we're going to talk some more about GameStop. Last time we talked about how I believe GME is the arc, the idiosyncratic risk, the asymmetric opportunity, and the reasons I provided for that were GME's record profits, the stock price remaining the same despite vastly improved fundamentals, and evidence for abusive shorting still exceeds the number of shares issued, as well as GameStop's recently announced warrant dividend. And finally, how shorts are responsible for paying the dividends. So, welcome to episode 2, Stock Market Boogaloo. First, I would like to explain what I meant in the last episode by accumulation phase. So, an accumulation phase, most simply, is the phase after you've identified a stock you like at a price you like and you begin buying. That is the accumulation phase. That is when we are, starting to pile up the security. There's a period of time that represents a phrase they use to represent that period of time is accumulation phase. All right. Now, the big boys though, they don't just see a stock they like at a price they like. They set the price they like and then they buy, and they buy as much as they want for basically as long as they want, nearly unchallenged. Now, of course, retail has challenged them recently, particularly in GameStop. But to kind of get a better look at what I'm talking about with this, you know, large players in the market setting the prices of securities for their accumulation phases, let's look at what Ken Griffin has to say about active managers setting the price of securities.
A lot of sense. Like that's a very cost-effective way to manage your money and to earn the market returns. Now, passive investing is actually rooted in the theory that markets are efficient, and that markets are efficient because of active managers setting the prices of securities. Firms like Citadel, firms like Fidelity, firms like Viking Global, Capital Research. We're all running large teams of people that are engaged in fundamental research, trying to drive the value of companies towards where we think they should be valued. And passive investing, in a sense.
All right. So, what Ken just said here is that active managers in the market are setting the prices of securities. And he named off several, the first two of which were his own organization, Citadel, and then another financial organization, Fidelity. He says markets are efficient because active managers set the price of securities. But this is not really the truth. This is some Ken Griffin propaganda. Efficient markets actually run on supply and demand. Free markets are very efficient. Markets set by active managers are corrupt. They are inevitably Ponzi schemes. All right, so that's how GameStop has had its price stay generally the same for so many years despite its fundamentals improving vastly. The active managers underneath the DTCC, so mostly market makers and payment for order flow brokerages, are currently mostly in control of the prices of securities. They are manipulating the market, and they said it in a very nice way here. And they are setting the price of securities. American markets currently do not experience free supply and demand because market makers and payment for order flow brokerages play a shell game with American market securities. So this isn't the only thing they're up to. Of course, they've got lots and lots of games. One, is just straight up propaganda on the internet. They are buying and telling you to sell or telling you to forget. Headlines like this ridiculous headline that suggests you should forget GameStop stock and instead invest in some trash crypto with the word GameStop slapped on it. They've been writing thousands of articles like this across dozens or hundreds of different article websites. They're not even all finance websites. Sometimes you'll get just random websites writing crazy crap about GameStop. Why would they write this crazy nonsense while they're buying? Benzinga. This actually is a news aggregator and finance aggregator website. They're telling you to forget GameStop stock. They're publishing dozens or hundreds of these articles. The boys in the market, they're loading up. Look at this. 2022, I told you the stock was under 30 bucks. Bam. What is that? So that's like 3 or 4 times. Institutional ownership increase. So that's what this graph is. This is the institutional ownership of GameStop. So this is your, hedge funds and investment banks and things like that. This is the amount of GameStop they own. So while they were telling you to forget, they're buying. Bam, in 22, look at that. Institutional ownership just generally rises. And then in December 2024, until this data is a month or two old, the institutional ownership has doubled again. So that's what you call an accumulation phase. They're buying and they're trying to get you to sell so they can get it cheaper. They're trying to get you to forget so they can get it cheaper and they don't have to share with you the wins when it goes up. I'd also like to mention how GME's cash on hand is well over half the size of its market capitalization. Currently, GameStop has $8.7 billion in cash on hand. So this is investment, profit, and selling debt. They have 8.7 billion in cash on hand, while their market cap today sits at 11.99 billion. Right now, GameStop could buy the majority of GameStop shares on the market, or they could just dry up all the liquidity on the market. They have enough cash on hand to take back nearly all of their market cap. Now that sounds like a lot of buying power, and they're probably not just going to use it all on buying shares. In fact, they're definitely not. There is a certain amount of the cash that has been set aside that they might use to purchase shares. The corporate leadership has that discretionary ability, but more than likely they're going to use that money to generate interest and invest in new products and services. And the last thing I'd like to talk about, the reason I called this episode 2 Stock Market Boogaloo. So, retail in 2020 and 2021, it said it would hold. The game changed for retail from panic selling to buying the dip. And this is a huge problem for the big money who need you to panic sell so that they can buy the dip. But retail's bought the dip, and for the most part, we're holding. And of course, we have a very strong presence in GameStop, but this phenomena is occurring across the market. You hear people talking about diamond handing their S&P 500 shares, and I don't blame them. Now, how did GME come to be on the front line of the class war? Well, GME is the security that retail caught them with their hand in the cookie jar. This squeeze. Those of us in the community call it the sneeze. It is not the end of the story. This is the culmination of a moment of panic when the market manipulators were caught with their hand in the cookie jar. Of course, they haven't taken their hand out of the cookie jar. They've just come up with a bunch of games to delay, to cover up, and delay consequences for having their hand in the cookie jar. Now, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, this time has given the manipulators time to neutralize or hedge their positions. It has given them time to limit their exposure to this GameStop situation. And so now that that exposure has become more tolerable for the quote unquote active managers, the stock price is allowed to begin to rise, which you'll notice actually started sometime in April of 2024. Now, that doesn't mean everybody's going to just get off. Of course, there are, like I said last episode, a ton of liabilities out there related to GameStop. And so if GameStop's stock price does experience a squeeze, of course, somebody's got to be squeezed for a squeeze to happen. Of course, there are still shorts out there, and they will eventually become buyers. GME is not on the front line of the class war because GameStop chose to be there. It's not there because Ryan Cohen put it there. It's strictly a coincidence that it is the security that retail has the strongest representation in. And so it has become a focus for big money to oppose. GameStop's stock price increasing is a critical victory for retail investors and the American working class. Retail investors, of course, is obvious because we're holding the GameStop. But the American working class, because retail investors are in the American working class. Straight, this process of revolutionizing GameStop, protecting its value as a security, and holding accountable the people with liability for their shorts and manipulations. And my final note on GME's relationship to the class war. There is a trend among some of the largest players in the game who are exposed to the short side of GameStop to be donors to the Republican Party. Ken Griffin himself is actually some years the number one largest single donor to the Republican Party. Bill Huang, you may have heard of him. He actually went to prison over the whole GameStop thing, among other things. He just committed a massive amount of fraud and was extremely short GameStop, while his political donations to Democrats are modest. He has donated nearly 80 million to evangelical ministries. Jeff Yass. Oh, which one is this guy again? Susquehanna, right. Millions of dollars to conservative and Republican representatives and causes. John Paulson of Paulson & Co. While Paulson & Co. may not be exposed to the short side of GameStop, to be honest, I'm not sure. They were involved in the attempt to devalue the company by toxifying its corporate leadership. John Paulson, hundreds of thousands, millions, perhaps, dollars to Republicans, including a certain president, Leon Black of Apollo Global Management, who I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure is short GameStop. Millions of dollars to Republicans and some small awards for some soft Democrats. So the people who are interested in GameStop's stock price going down, the people who are interested in the destruction of GameStop as a corporation, are often some of the greatest donors to conservative and Republican causes. Funny that.